All right. Hello, beautiful humans, and welcome back to the Bitcoin Stoa. On our ninth episode of School of Coin, Eddie and I are going to be covering self-custody. So current Moscow time is 1980 at 7:13/242. And as a reminder, the Bitcoin Stoa is a community-funded platform. So if you enjoy listening, you can support the project by sending some sats to the QR code at bitcoinstoa.com. You can also stream sats with something like the Breeze app, which has a really badass podcast feature. And at the end of the day, one of the best ways to support this project is simply by sharing it with others who might be curious to learn about Bitcoin. If you found these conversations helpful to expand your understanding, share it with someone who's starting out their journey. And I think that's the best way we spread this message. So with that said, let's dive into self-custody. And we're going to try a different approach today with the format that we're using. So I've spent more time researching self-custody than Eddie. So I'm going to share my current protocol. And my hope with that is for it to be critiqued and challenged so that I can learn how to do better and further improve my security. And hopefully by sharing the system that I'm currently using, that I've evolved over time, it gives people ideas of how they can engage with their own strategy. So my opinion is that, over the past 3 months, I've had a lot more time to work on my self-custody strategy. And so I made the decision that instead of gradually progressing and evolving my security strategy as the amount of wealth I have in Bitcoin increases, I just figured I would create a protocol that I could grow into, which would be suitable for storing an amount of wealth equivalent to 10 million fiat dollars today. And how did I get there? Well, to that number, my opinion is that it's highly likely that anyone who owns one Bitcoin today will be the equivalent of a present day multimillionaire in a decade. And the way I got there is I live in Canada. If a Bitcoin is 60 grand right now, if all it does is grow at the same rate it has for the past decade, for the next decade, one Bitcoin in a decade is $12 million. So it's not that far fetched. And so basically I was like, okay, I'm going to design a protocol for $12 million. And I don't think anyone needs more than $12 million. So it's like, that's probably the max cap. If I ever get to that in my life, it'd be great. And then, so that protocol is a 5-level protocol that I'll go through today. And I look forward to hearing everyone's feedback. And, I just think that having the capacity to be 100% sovereign and highly secure with a significant amount of digital property is like a pretty badass thing to do. So let's dive in. Eddie, you got anything to say before we start getting into it?
Yeah, Nick, I'm really looking forward to hear your framework, because I just personally think that is something that I didn't think of just yet. I've only been working on self-custody for about a year now, and I have thought about that. Like, technology changes very quickly. The stuff that I'm using to hold my Bitcoin right now, may not be what I'm using in a year from now. But my idea was, okay, I'm going to learn what I can, learn now, and then, I'll eventually graduate. But I appreciate that idea of being able to grow into something, grow into a self-custody framework. I think that has a lot of positives to it. I'm really excited to explore those with you. And I'm also looking forward to, as a younger hodler of Bitcoin, I want to be able to provide some perspective and insight to those that are just learning, and happy to discuss all of the ins and outs of it with you today. So yeah, let's do it.
Powerful. Yeah, I think if you put it in the open, everyone learns together, right? If one listener to this has a key insight and we're able, and I can implement that, then I'm doing better, right? And if a bunch of people get insights from what I've learned, then we're all doing better. And so if we all learn together, I think we should do a self-custody show. I think one of the shows listed on the store right now is called Mastering Self-Custody. So that will really just be about talking to the smartest people that work in Bitcoin security, and just pick their brain about what can we do to be better at having secure self-custody. So maybe a good place to start is just to kind of frame this with a bit of context and start with what is self-custody and why is it important? And, self-custody to me means taking full responsibility for my Bitcoin, right? Within the context of Bitcoin. And by holding my own keys, I'm essentially accepting full, complete responsibility to safeguard my wealth. And so, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because if I fuck it up, it's on me and that's gone and no one's going to bail me out. But it also eliminates the potential that someone else might steal my Bitcoin, or a counterparty risk can actually come to being something that's not good for me. So taking self-custody is accepting radical responsibility And to me, that is the best way to do this. And I think that's really deep in the Bitcoin ethos. So, that saying in Bitcoin, not your keys, not your coins, your keys, your coins. I think everyone should probably aim to take self-custody over time as they're able to devote more time to understanding it, right? Like my mom has exposure to Bitcoin through an ETF, but we talk about this frequently, where the goal is for her to eventually start selling little pieces of the ETF, convert that into actual Bitcoin, and then build her own self-custody confidence. But it takes time. You don't have to rush it. Yeah, I think it's really important, because with a bearer asset, which is kind of like cash, possession is actually the only thing that matters, right? You either hold your own property or you don't. And that's the hard line in the sand. And if you don't, then there's counterparty risk. And, it might be large or it might be very small, but it's always going to be there if you're allowing someone else to take custody of your coins. And so, a lot of people I know have a hybrid system where a certain part of their wealth is with a custodian, a certain part is self-custodied, and everyone has to make their own decision. But I think with full ownership, with self-custody, the only risk is your ability to self-custody. And so that's where this becomes like a learning journey to improve how you do that. And to me, the meaning behind it is I want to be fully sovereign. I want to be free of any masters. I want to hold my own keys, which was intimidating initially, especially as the number goes up, but becomes less intimidating as you improve your understanding. So that's what self-custody is to me. That's why I feel it's important. I think another important thing to mention is the importance of running a node, because I think that's really deeply part of a full self-custody strategy. And essentially running a node, it means many things. It can mean different things to different people, but essentially it means possessing your own copy of the ledger and verifying your own transactions. Why run a node? There's a lot of reasons. It can be privacy. It can be to have trustless confirmations, help defend the Bitcoin rules, help strengthen and decentralize the network. So there's a lot of reasons why one might run a node. And for me, it was a no-brainer, right? It was $300. It was a Sunday morning project for about 3 hours, and then a weekly 20-minute check-in. And you got to have the time and the motivation to do that. But I don't do much with my node right now. I kind of play around with it. I do verify the significant transactions that I make, but my goal is in future to understand it better and better. And we'll record future episodes about the why and the how for running a node, because it's become a lot less intimidating now that the tech is better. It's more intuitive. And so, yeah, I think I was 2 years ago, I tried to run a node, and when it asked for command line prompt, I tapped out. I was like, no, I'm not ready for this shit yet. It's not ready for yet. When I tried it earlier this year, it was like super. I almost thought I did it wrong because it was so easy. So it's come a long way. If you're intimidated by it, don't be. It's much easier, and hopefully we can simplify it. I think before I get into the kind of 5-layer protocol, I think an important thing to note is that over time, you need to evolve your strategy as the amount of wealth you have in Bitcoin increases. And so your strategy that you choose will never be static, because the price of Bitcoin is never static, right? From year to year, it changes. And if you start with like $1,000 in Bitcoin, and then in 5 years, you have $50,000 in Bitcoin, well, you need to update your strategy, right? Because now the risk of losing that Bitcoin is much higher. And so every year, if your Bitcoin appreciates, your security protocol should also be updated. And I kept having to do that. And as the prices shot up, at certain points, I was like, shit, I got to review this. And so this whole framework of choosing 5 levels and then updating each level as I learned how to do things better, but knowing that that's kind of the context was really important to me. So yeah, it's a continual learning process for me included, but let's get into it. So the framework that I use is 5 layers. It's a 5-level protocol. Layer 1 would be the most convenient and least secure. So something that I use frequently and typically has small amounts. And then layer 5 is the least convenient, the most secure. Those are the funds that I use most infrequently, and they're larger amounts. So from level 1 to level 5 is convenient and least secure to inconvenient and most secure. And that's sort of like the big continuum. And then between each level, if you want to chime in, Eddie, with questions or anything like that, you just let me know. And even chiming in with like what you currently use for what you perceive to be that level in terms of software or products.
Yeah. And so, I also guess one thing to mention too is it's probably okay to utilize multiple levels at the same time. Like you said, you could have a certain amount of Bitcoin that maybe you would like to have, maybe 50,000 sats where you could send some to some friends, or maybe, make a little purchase of some coffee in El Salvador if you were able to do something like that. But then you can also utilize these other more secure and private strategies, like Nick is going to talk about, to protect your larger values of Bitcoin. So
yeah, totally. I use all these levels, right? And level 4 and 5 are kind of still in the works because they're pushing my technical abilities. But yeah, I think, for someone just starting out who has $100 in Bitcoin, maybe they only need the level 1. But as you get deeper and deeper into it, as you learn more and you build more conviction and put more of your wealth in Bitcoin, you end up having to sort of explore the deeper layers of security, like make more robust security protocols. So I think one fundamental that applies to all these levels and is important for everyone to, I think, know is the geographic dispersal of recovery seed and device. So whether that's a hot wallet on my phone, that would be my device. The recovery seed for that wallet is going to be kept somewhere not on my phone. Right? My hardware wallet and my hardware wallet recovery seed will not be kept in a little box together, right? The whole idea is to geographically disperse them. It doesn't have to be like miles away. It can just be a different part of your house. But I had a friend that is like, yeah, I keep my Trezor and my recovery seed and all of my information in one little box. I'm like, if someone finds that box, you're fucked, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you need to keep them in different places. So I think keeping your device and your recovery seed in different physical places, very important, and holds true for all of these. So that's kind of like a fundamental little nugget that I think is important to mention.
Yeah.
So let's go through level 1. Level 1 is my mobile device. So this is a mobile phone hot wallet for daily use. So like you said, if you just want to make coffee purchases or send some sats to a friend, this would be, I look at this as like the equivalent of my traditional wallet, right? I'm not going to keep thousands of dollars in my pocket at all times. I might keep $100, $50. So I'm currently playing with Moon Wallet. I like it because it's a non-custodial, and Moon is spelled M-U-U-N. It's a non-custodial Lightning and main chain wallet, which I find really cool. I also use Bread Wallet, Green by Blockstream, and I also use Breeze. And Breeze is probably the one that I actually spend most frequently from, because I use the sats streaming feature where like every minute of listening, I can stream like 50 sats, which is a fraction of a penny. But for the creator, it's my way of thanking them for creating their content. And so, yeah, that's my level 1. What level 1 software are you using right now?
Yeah, currently, so I'm just learning how to use Moon Wallet and Breeze Wallet specifically for the podcast feature, which I do think is really cool. Awesome. That they have integrated with it. But personally, I don't have any funds on there just yet. I literally just like play around with the UI. Cool. And I guess as far as like my true layer 1 would even be like a step below that. It would be like, my wallet of funds of Bitcoin, what I would have in my back pocket is on Cash App, which cool. is which I guess I'll make that distinction. I don't have any recovery phrase or anything like that. So, the benefit of utilizing a wallet that does have those recovery phrases and things like that, like Moon, is going to be beneficial for you in the long run. And it's, I think the true purpose of Bitcoin as well is just to be fully responsible. So
yeah, but I mean, you make a good point. I never even thought of Cash App because I'm in Canada. We don't have that stuff here.
That's true. So I guess you can't use Cash App in Canada. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, we don't have Cash App. We don't have Venmo. Dude, we're living in the dark ages here in Canada. It's fun.
Oh my gosh.
And just to put a little pin in that, shout out to Jack Dorsey, who literally, like, him leaving Twitter for Bitcoin is the best fucking trade we could have ever made. Like, I think it's going to be like, even just their new Spiral little video that they made for the Lightning development kit is like, I think we're going to see some sick stuff from Square and from Jack. So I'm like, thank you, Jack, for being an amazing human. Bitcoin needs you. And Bitcoin doesn't need anyone. That's a lie. But I think as a Bitcoiner, I'm very grateful that Jack is working on Bitcoin.
100%.
So, but yeah, that's a good point. So, I mean, if you keep $50 on a custodial wallet, maybe you don't need the seed phrase backup, right? Like there's probably going to be bigger problems if someone steals your phone than losing $50 on your Cash App account. So, and you have a login for that. So technically your login maybe is like your seed phrase, right? If your phone gets stolen, you log in on another device. Yeah. So yeah, for level 1, maybe you don't need a seed phrase backup. It depends on how many of your funds you're keeping in that wallet. And like I said, I keep it to about 100 fiat Canadian funny money dollars worth of value. And that's pretty much it. If it gets beyond that, then I go to layer 2. So level 2 is what I call my stash. And this is a hardware cold storage hardware wallet. And this is for like monthly use. So I might have like 2 months of personal overhead expenses worth of value in there. And the other thing too is I created this framework as something that works for me right now, but will also work for me if I'm on a straight up Bitcoin standard, where if I don't have a bank account, how do I create a parallel system to like my checkings account, my savings account, my vault, quote unquote vault. And so my mobile device is like my physical wallet. My stash, which is level 2, would be like my checkings account. So I have a couple months worth of overhead in there. I currently use Trezor, and I've also been recently using the Jade hardware wallet with my mobile device. So technically that's a multi-sig because my phone is one password, and then the actual hardware wallet device itself is another one. So I'm really liking
the Jade. And I like that the Jade is a multi-sig, right?
It is, yeah. And I think you can use multiple Jades, but even just having requiring your phone and the hardware device together means that there's automatically 2 passcodes or 2 signatures needed. So I really like that. And I'm also playing around with Cold Card, although that's a more technical wallet. So I haven't really dove deep into that. So I'm currently actually reading a pretty high quality critique of hardware wallets by a guy called Robert Spiegler. And so he, the article goes beyond my technical understanding right now, but I'm slowly chipping away and kind of learning. But he makes a pretty good case that hardware wallets might not be everything they cracked up to be, right? Like they came out after Mt. Gox as a way to be like, okay, well, we need some sort of way to take custody of our own Bitcoins that goes beyond just having a software wallet. But I think like anything, they are not perfect. And I think really diving into this critique is helping me create a better understanding of like, what is the actual risk of me using a hardware wallet? And so for level 2, I still think it's fine. I'm hoping to do a podcast with Robert actually to kind of pick his brain a little bit deeper. But right now for level 2, I use a hardware multi-sig with Jade, and I also use a Trezor, and I find that works pretty well. And like I said, that is for monthly use, maybe 2 months of personal expenses. That's level 2. Any questions about that one?
Yeah, no questions at all. And I think that, I mean, depending on where you're taking level 3, that level 2 is where I'm at, and that is, to be honest, like, I think like what I had envisioned, like, besides like maybe utilizing Casa or some third party for a multi-sig storage, I kind of thought that hardware wallets, cold storage was like the end all be all. And so it was like, okay, like this is a safe bet. But I do agree. Like there are, it seems to me like there would be a lot of potential issues. I mean, you're still running off of software, you're still running off of hardware, and hardware, deteriorates and things like that. So, yeah, like for me, level 2, I utilize Ledger and I utilize Trezor, and I've heard a lot of great stuff about the Jade wallet. I just haven't been able to get my hands on one yet. It seems to be like they sell out every time I check it out.
Yeah, dude, they're so small too. Like they're like half of a finger, and they're just like a tiny little thing. The good thing I like about the Jade, I believe it's fully open source, and Blockstream they're just a badass group. Like, if they're making some shit, they're making it well. And I know that Jack had mentioned they're going to make an open source hardware wallet. So I'm really keen to see what Spiral comes out with, because I think being able to build one yourself and use straight up open source software, that's the ultimate, right? Like that is the Bitcoin ethos. And I think we're going to see more and more companies creating open source hardware wallets, because that's a really important element of Bitcoin, of the ecosystem. And nothing is perfect, and so I think hardware wallets are still good. I'm not going to stop using them. One thing in reading the article that I'm looking at is like, okay, what are all the attack vectors on hardware wallets? Like you can have like the wallet you receive, you're trusting that manufacturer is trustworthy, right? So there is an element of trust that you're trusting that going from the manufacturer to you, that hardware wallet was never doctored. There was never any malware. There was never any. So there's elements. And I think just knowing, even with my like low level technical understanding, knowing the attack vectors makes me more careful. Like I'm going to buy a Trezor directly from Trezor. I'm not going to buy it from like a random Amazon shop that opened yesterday. So I think there's some good things to note there. And maybe we'll do like a session about the hardware wallet critique, and I can just kind of share what I've been learning. So that's level 2. Level 3, I call this my vault. And this would be, it's a same thing. It's a cold storage hardware wallet. And this is essentially like my annual savings repository. So this would be like my savings account. Anything that any income that I make beyond what I need for my overhead goes into there. It basically gets dumped into there. And then once a year, I'll bring it from level 3 to level 4. But that's kind of like my savings account. I currently use Jade. It's a multi-sig. I'm playing with same thing. I'm playing with Cold Card. Level 2 and level 3 are kind of similar, but I won't use level 3 as frequently. It'll mostly just be ins and no money taken out, except if I need to do like a large purchase, right? If I was on a straight up Bitcoin standard, didn't have any fiat, if I wanted to buy a car, if I wanted to buy something outright, and it was a large purchase, I would go into kind of my vault and take some of that money out of there and put it to, like maybe plug it into my mobile wallet or even pay directly from the vault to the person I'm buying something from. So that's my level 3. It's just a little bit beefed up. Like where I store the hardware wallet and the private key might have more thought going into it because there's more Bitcoin at stake there. But that's basically a dumping ground, like my savings account for my annual dumping ground for where I put the money that I don't need to survive, that I don't need for my personal overhead. And so that's more, if level 1 is a daily sort of daily access, level 2 is monthly access, level 3 is like yearly access. So that's level 3. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I really like that. I think it's good to be able to, even though you're still utilizing cold storage and you still have maybe beefed up physical and geographical locations for it. I think it's still cool to be able to split that apart into like a monthly. Like it's good to have those frameworks, because for me, like there was at a point in time where I did have the majority of my Bitcoin on one hard drive, and that'll eat away at your conscience a little bit too. But I think like it's really fun to talk about all of these strategies, because like if anybody is still like, if anyone watching this is still wondering like why it's important to you, like this could very well be one of those reasons, like Nick was mentioning, like maybe one day you'd like to buy a car. And one of the cool things about Bitcoin, and one of the reasons that I love it so much, is that in today's traditional financial system, like not everybody can participate. Even if you were an entrepreneur, maybe you maybe for some reason you wouldn't be able to buy a house or get a loan or something like that. But if you had Bitcoin and were able to self-custody it and exchange that in the future for like something really awesome, like a car or something that you really would value, that's like the true purpose of self-custody. And so, I think like the level 3 strategy is awesome. And it's just like giving me more reminders to constantly look at my savings and my wealth in those terms, like a wallet, like what you'd have on your person, what you would have in a monthly savings account, in something that you only touch in a year and beyond.
Yeah. And it's I think the goal with a self-custody protocol is to keep it as simple. Like I went through many different phases with how I did self-custody. I went through phases where I had like 10 different hardware wallets in different places, because I was like, well, if one gets stolen, then I'm still okay. And then eventually I was like, well, shit, now I got to keep track of 10 different hardware wallets, 10 different private seeds. And it actually got confusing. Right. And so at a certain point, you make such a crazy strategy to avoid someone stealing it, where it's like, you can stop yourself from even accessing it. So I think it's still important to be simple is secure. 2, if you make it a treasure hunt and it's too complex, you risk losing it yourself of your own fault. So I think there's like a very fine balance there, but I find that simplicity, what I like about this protocol is that it's simple and I can understand it. And if I do like once a year, I'll do like in December, I'll take half a morning each Sunday for a couple Sundays, and I'll just do like a refresher. Like, am I still comfortable doing a transaction? Do I know where everything is? Do I know how much is in each thing? Do I have to rebalance and take it from, like, for example, my monthly account and put it in my level 3 vault that I'm not going to touch? Is that still in a safe place? All that kind of stuff. And so I think there's as your wealth increases in Bitcoin, there are more considerations to make, but you also have more time and energy and probably motivation to actually do that. And so I think it's this organic, for me, it's always been this organic thing where as soon as I get anxious about whether my Bitcoin's safe, I know I have to re-up on understanding and maybe beefing up my protocol. And so any concerns you have, based on my experience, can get resolved through better understanding. Like, just spend time learning about self-custody and you're like, oh, I can be calm. I have this under control. I understand my strategy. But it really is just like an ongoing, evolving learning process. And as the technology changes, you have to learn as well. And I think the cool thing, back to what you said about like really being a sovereign, is like, okay, say you want to move to El Salvador, and when you get down there, you want to buy a car. You can literally write 24 words in a book, fly to El Salvador with just a book, and buy a car when you like buy a hardware wallet down there and just buy a car like right away. You don't have to ask permission for anyone. You don't have to claim that you're bringing money across the border, like none of that. And I think this is a very special technology where right now it's really just digital property, right? Like no one wants to spend their digital property because it's so precious. But we will get to a world eventually where that becomes a currency. It will still remain digital property, best digital property you can have, but it's interoperable with converting it into a currency, which can then be used to buy things. And so we're always going to need some understanding of self-custody if we want to hold our Bitcoin. But the eventuality is to use that self-custody knowledge to be able to use that Bitcoin to buy things. And being 100% sovereign and not having to ask people permission to do anything is like, that's pretty cool. That's why I love Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So let's go to level 4. And I should say that level 4 and 5, I'm still researching and still kind of working to implement. So I haven't done all these things yet, but I kind of know, I know what I'm trying to learn right now, and I'm actively working towards it. So level 4, I call my deep vault. So if level 3 is level 1 is mobile device, level 2 is mustache, level 3 is vault, level 4 is the deep vault. And, if the vault was something I access, like is my annual savings account, the deep vault is like my 5-year savings account. So I'll put, as soon as the amount of money I would need for a large purchase or in 1 year gets high, I plug it into level 4, which is like a deep savings account. And this one is analog. So the private keys will never touch an internet connected device. My level 4 will be a collaborative custody wallet. So what that means is that I'll create like a 3 of 7 multi-sig, which is a Yeti protocol. And I'll mention sort of how people can check that out at the end, because I think it's really helpful. And basically it's a 3 of 5 multi-sig collaborative custody strategy, which means that I might have 3 people in my family. I'll give each of them 1 key. And I need 3 keys out of, if one of them loses a key, then there's still extra ones, right? So there's some redundancy built into there, but it requires multiple people. If someone comes to me and says, give me all your Bitcoin with a gun, I can say like, I literally can't give it to you because it requires other humans to engage with this. And so it's just like an extra layer of security. So it's fully offline. Those keys are created on a computer that is not connected to the internet. Those keys are also multimedia. So you'll have like a paper copy of the seed, you'll have a digital copy of the seed, and you'll also have a metal copy of the seed. And so I think the redundancy has to be built in just to make sure that, okay, if there's a lot at stake, we got to really think through how this is done.
So I guess I have a quick question for myself, sure. Actually, is because that's one thing that does intimidate me, is like using keys that have never touched, like for instance, like a paper key. Now, as someone who's running a full node, that is how you can like have that comfort of like seeing that transaction like verified and seeing what you have on, like seeing your Bitcoin on the blockchain through your node instead of through your UI on your Trezor. Like, am I seeing that correctly?
So you'll have a public address just even for that. That's a good question. And I don't know, some of these answers might be wrong. So I hope someone points this out at some point if I am saying something that's wrong. But as best as I understand it, you're generating a public address and then you're generating multiple wallet addresses, for example. And you derive the private key offline. So I will hold the private key, but I'll also have the public address available for me to be able to send Bitcoin there. And I can check up on that wallet by literally just plugging the public address into my node and seeing what's in there.
Okay, right.
So it's really just the private keys that I'm keeping private. the public key, I can look at all times. It's publicly available, but I'm always going to try to avoid connecting my IP address to, like, I'll use like a Tor browser or something like that, or maybe a VPN to look up that public address for the deep vault on a block explorer. So yeah, so there's redundancy, 3 of 7 multi-sig, Yeti protocol, never touches an online computer, just for added safety. And this is probably all overkill, but like I said, if you own a Bitcoin now, in a decade, you'll be a millionaire. And like, there's a lot at stake. If you don't want to have to go to consultants all the time or have a custodian, you need to take this shit seriously. So at least that's my perspective. And so that's why this is probably kind of slightly overkill, but in a decade, it might not be overkill. And I just want to plan for that so I know where I'm trying to get to. And so the deep vault is used for significant investments. Like, I don't think I'll ever buy a cash or a house with cash. I just don't think fiat is going to be around for a while. Paying for things in fiat makes too much sense. So I'll collateralize the Bitcoin and borrow fiat. So I don't know if I'll ever, like, I think I will, but it'll be several decades in future. But if I was going to make a significant purchase that's more than like a car, like maybe something like a house or a piece of property, or a significant investment in a company, then this is what I would use level 4 for. And I would also, level 4 starts to get into inheritance also. So I don't have any kids. I don't have any dependents right now. Inheritance isn't a big deal to me. If I die, all my coins go with me. And I trust that the planet will allocate those resources well. Like, that's the ultimate form of philanthropy, right? Is to not even pretend like you know where you should put that money. It's just like everyone in the world holding Bitcoin just got a little bit richer, and they will allocate it appropriately. But if and when I do have kids, it gets to a point where I got to develop a strategy where, if, like, I got to develop a death plan, right? If I die, which people in my family are responsible for using those keys? Do they know how to use them? And do they know how that wealth gets allocated to specific people or specific things? And so when you get into the deep vault level 4, you get into kind of inheritance planning if you have dependents and if you want to ensure passover of your wealth. So that's level 4. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a really awesome point to make. Just on the inheritance side, I personally don't have any children or any dependents myself as well, but it is something that I think everybody should think about eventually. And if you do have some type of savings, I think it's one of the greatest things about Bitcoin is that, like, you holding your wealth in Bitcoin gives you more power to make very clear decisions with those types of things, in regarding to inheritances, or like making decisions beyond yourself, like beyond your death, with your wealth. So I think that's like, just to like bring a quick point, I think that's like a really awesome aspect about Bitcoin, and the fact that is, like, it's I guess, like everyone says, programmable money. It's money that you can actually program and have a lot of control over. And so, like you said, Nick, like, in 10 years, if anybody is hodling, long enough, and sees the number go up, you can either pay people to help you, or you can put in the work now. There's a lot of resources that are out there to teach you and teach me, and we're all like looking to help each other, like flourish. And so I think level 4 is really awesome. And I think it just goes to show, like, that like, I would say, like, Bitcoiners, there becomes like a separation, like when it's about the money, and like when it's really about like something more and something bigger. And that's what I really find, like, with Bitcoin, is it usually like leads towards the bigger picture. And it's like, I can't even remember the last time that I've like cared about, or like, I mean, I still get excited, but it's like not about the price. It's not about the money, and it's about the foundational values. And you can even hear hedge fund managers talk about that. They're like, well, I like Bitcoin because I like the foundations. And so, being able to add in very deep or quote unquote level 4 and level 5 protocols to your wealth, I think is just like amazing. So it's really cool.
And it's cool that we can do it as individuals. I think that's the coolest thing. Like, it requires work, but the resources are there. The Bitcoiners are insanely generous with their time, especially the people who have been in this for a long time. They're more than willing to share what they say, as long as they know that it's going to fall on the right ears and be put to good use. And when you talk about will, like, I had this conversation with my brother the other day. He's like, well, how does Bitcoin work when it comes to a will? And I kind of thought about it. I'm like, Bitcoin is a will, literally. Like you can program, like a will is you're programming where your money goes when you die.
Yeah.
When you get deep enough into Bitcoin, you can program the actual money. Like I even told them, like I could go to a lawyer and give them like a 2 of 3 multi-sig key. They get one key and they get instructions. And it basically says that if I die and you receive my death certificate, you use this key to process this transaction, which has been pre-scripted,
Right.
and that pays you $1,000, right? And then family members have a key. They meet up with that lawyer. The lawyer gets paid. The family members have the other keys. It only works when all keys are used. No one person can use that key without the lawyer having the, like, there's really cool ways to program this in a really elegant way that makes it so that everything is taken care of exactly as your wishes are without anyone digging their hands in, because you've just planned the whole thing. And, you know, it kind of might seem morbid to some people to think about like your own death, but I do it regularly and it makes me appreciate life way more.
Yeah.
And so I don't have any dependents right now, but I do want to make sure, and level 5 has something plugged in there that I think I find really interesting, which is programmable endowments. So I'll talk about that. But I think this whole notion that like Bitcoin is a will, if you know how to program it and you understand how this works, that's super fucking cool, because no government is going to try. You don't have to ask permission of the government to get a dead person's money. That person gets to determine where their money goes. And that might piss governments off, but like that makes me happy, and knowing that people have control over their wealth and no one's going to try and steal it from them.
Right.
So
100% agree.
All right, let's get into level 5. This is the deeper layer. This is what I call my family vault. And family can mean a lot of things. It could be my blood related family. It can be, you know, anyone I do business with is my family, right? Everyone at all the core people at TFC are my family. You're my family, right? So I think family vault really has a deeper meaning. It can be applied to different families. And this shares a lot of features with level 4, where it's analog. So none of the private keys ever touch the internet. It's collaborative custody, cold wallet for like, these are, if my deep vault for level 4 was like my 5-year savings, level 5 is like 10-year / life savings. So this is everything that I have that doesn't need to be put in the previous layers for easier access. This one is super inconvenient to access, right? That's kind of the point, is make it really hard to steal. There's a lot of redundancy. And this one, I haven't done this yet. Like I said, level 4 and 5, I'm still researching. I'm almost done level 4, the 3 of 7 Yeti protocol, which was like, it pushed my technical abilities, but it actually was, if you take the time to do it. And shout out to JW Weatherman for open sourcing this, because this is the Yeti protocol is fully open source. I'll give people the website at the end, but like that one pushed me. For level 5, I'm going to be doing a 6 of 15 Shamir backup, which is like, if you haven't heard of a Shamir backup, check it out. Trezor has a great article on the website. But essentially what you're doing is taking your private key, parsing it into different parts, like up to 15, I think it's up to 16 parts. And then choosing, you know, like if M is the total amount of parts and N is the number of parts needed to complete a transaction, you're creating an N of M protocol. So for me, it would be, I mean, I just kind of have been working on this for the past month. So I don't know if this is how it'll actually end up, but a 6 of 15 Shamir backup, whereby there's 50, the private key is divided into 15 parts. You need 6 of them to come together to execute and sign a transaction, which means that you get a lot more people involved. And that's where the family vault part comes into play. This is where you get into programmable endowments. So for example, with TFC has a treasury with a bit of Bitcoin. And if that increases over time, that essentially is designed as an endowment to perpetually fund the work that the Foot Collective does to like do what they need to do to help people reclaim responsibility for their health. And that will hopefully exist far beyond my existence. And so programmable endowments is kind of like that will that I said, where you can literally put your instructions, program the money does exactly what it's supposed to. And this another thing that happens in level 5 that I haven't looked into yet, and I don't even know if it's really available, is time locks. So you can literally say like, this money in this wallet cannot be accessed for 5 years. It can't be. So even if someone finds a private key, puts together 6 of the 15 units, if they do it before the time that time lock allows it to be opened up, it doesn't work. And so that's like a cool time element that you plug into there as an extra layer of security. Now, I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff to think about there, right? Like what if the technology changes and you can't access your money when there's a hard fork? Like I think there's a lot of stuff to go through to like really think through time locks and when they're appropriate. And then this one has a death plan as well. So if you die, what happens to all the money? But at the end of the day, 4 and 5 are both analog. The private keys never touch the internet. Their collaborative custody requires more than just me, which means it's inconvenient, but it's also more secure. And these are both more complex strategies, but also are going to be used almost never, right? Apart from like really outlier moments. So they don't need to be super convenient to access. So those are my 5 levels, right? So you got mobile, level 1, stash, level 2, vault, level 3, deep vault, level 4, family vault, level 5. And it goes from most convenient and sort of most frequently accessed to least convenient, least frequently accessed, and from least secure to most secure. And so, those are that's my current framework. The actual protocol, the actual strategy I use for each of those protocol levels might change. But I think knowing that there's 5 layers of depth gives me clarity to know like what strategies are appropriate for each level, what level should hold funds for what uses. And I find it like it will be dynamic, it will change, but I think those 5 layers or 5 levels will stay constant so that it gives me some structure. What are your thoughts about that at level 5 or just the whole thing?
Yeah. I really, I think just my thoughts about the whole thing in general, really. The one thing that I was like, that I just can't get my mind off of is like, a lot of these things are really hard to think about, like just straight up. Many of the topics that we have had the pleasure to discuss today. And I think like it's not just like that for me. I think that it's like that for a lot of other people. And so I just encourage like myself, I encourage anyone listening to this, any foot nerds out there, like reclaiming themselves. I think like the most exciting thing for me is that like although at times I'm like faced with like fear and doubt and insecurity, you just got to keep plugging away, and you like, for me, like I find these like huge moments of clarity and like huge moments of like enlightenment, and like I can get goosebumps, and it's just so fun to talk about self-custody, and just really dig into all the different layers, because I think like anybody listening to this, whatever age they are, is going to find benefit of one of those layers or all of them. Sure. And I think that it was just super beneficial to be able to dig into like each one of them in particular. And like you said, like all of these strategies will probably have some type of fluidity and change to them, but no matter what, I think it's like props to you for being able to come up with like a really almost like static framework that you can utilize, like, and kind of look at different situations within life. Like I think that's awesome. And I definitely was able to like take some good notes away from this, just thinking about like me personally. I'm at the point to where, I want to start etching some seeds and getting them like off paper, and making sure that I like can split up my seeds in my hard drives, and like just having that confidence. Again, it's like a for me it was like, you have this little bit of fear, so it's like, okay, cool, I got all my Bitcoin onto hard drives, and then I keep it all together, and it's like, but why am I keeping it there? It's like you're like holding yourself back. So it's like really fun and exciting to work through those processes, making it more robust, making your wealth and your stash more secure, and then like and then re-examining it over time. So yeah, like I loved it.
Yeah, that's the key. And I think most people, like for a long time, I was literally at level 1 and level 2, right? I had a wallet on my phone, my Play wallet with some Play money, and then I had a hardware wallet, and that was like all I needed, right? Because I didn't have any need to plan ahead further than that, right? The amount of wealth that was in Bitcoin wasn't significant enough where it was like, yeah, if I lose it, it's going to suck, but like I'll be okay, right? I still have money in my bank account. And so as your conviction goes up, as the percentage of your wealth held in Bitcoin goes up, which might not be you actively dumping it in there, it might just be that the Bitcoin's appreciating in price. Like I said, if you have 1 Bitcoin and it's 60 grand in a decade, if it just does what it did for the previous decade, 170% compounded growth annually, you have 12 million bucks. Like this shit happens quick. And so as your wealth increases, your pressure to use your time to work to earn more money decreases, and the amount of time you have available and energy available to research how to keep the wealth that you own safe if you choose to self-custody, which is the choice everyone's going to has to make, right? And I'm not saying everyone has to do this. And I'm certainly not saying everyone needs to know all those levels, right? Maybe if you're just starting out, it's just level 1, right? Like Moon Wallet, Bread Wallet, Breeze, like just test it out, play with it, put $10 in and see how it works. Maybe then you go to level 2, right? I had a chat with a friend of mine last night who wanted to, he texted me, he's like, I finally want to get into Bitcoin. Can you help me set up sort of a secure wallet? And I was like, yeah. And we went through level 1 and level 2, and that's all he needs right now. But he knows that there are other levels. And when he starts to feel anxious that maybe his coins aren't secure as he keeps learning, he'll at least have a framework to be like, okay, what's the next level? What's the next layer of protection that I can embed if the amount of wealth in here starts to increase to the point where I'm like, there's bigger risk of losing this now. So I need to evolve it. And I think everyone should be learning at their own pace based on their own perspective of how precious is their Bitcoin to them. I hope this gets critiqued. I hope there's, right now we don't have a big community, but hopefully the Stoic community grows, and the more it grows, the more people can critique this and the better this can get. And I think eventually the plan should be just like we have the learning protocols, level 1 to 5. I think we should put this framework on the website to be open source and basically be like, or maybe we create a GitHub and say like, okay, this is what we use. Please critique this. Please let us know how to make this better. And then we just let everyone see it so that we can tell everyone the best that we know how to do right now and improve it as time goes on. And I think there's something really cool about this notion of putting something open source, letting everyone dissect it, critique it, improve it. That is Bitcoin. That is the philosophy of Bitcoin. And so I think I'm really keen to hear what people have to say about this. The Yeti protocol that I mentioned is 100% open source, and it's available at Yeti, YETI cold.com. So if you go there, there's, I think, 3 levels of wallets that they recommend. The highest level is a 3 of 7 multi-sig. So that's the one that I used for my level 4. And it challenged me technically, but it wasn't overwhelming when I just chipped away at it slowly, right? It probably took me like 2 months literally to do it. And it's not like I was working on it constantly. It's just like, once a week I would take an hour and read what I needed and go and buy like the USB thumb drives and know how to identify them and all this kind of stuff. So, and like I said, we plan to do the Mastering Self-Custody show in 2022, and we'll feature really smart Bitcoiners who are OGs in security, who understand self-custody, and basically have them just critique whatever protocol we have that we're posting out there and see what they say and have them be able to help us improve it. So just some golden nuggets. Regardless of what strategy you use, always aim to keep it simple and avoid the danger of 100% security. 100% security means that no one can access it, not even you. And that is not a good thing, right? So like you want it secure, but not 100%. And another golden nugget that I found really powerful is the best way to reduce uncertainty and anxiety about securing your Bitcoin is to literally make a regular habit, a regular practice of learning and experimenting, right? Like I learned early on to make small mistakes by playing around with some, dummy Bitcoin wallets, like hardware wallets that had maybe like $20 worth. And I would just learn the process of how do I do a transaction? How do I verify I don't screw it up? And if I make a mistake, it's $20. It's not thousands of dollars. So make small mistakes so that you avoid making big ones. Have an active learning practice to reduce your anxiety about keeping your Bitcoin secure, because you can understand if I have no exceptional ability, I just have a lot of time to be able to learn this shit. Anyone can learn how to do this. My mom's going to learn how to do this, and she's not very tech savvy. So anyone can learn. It's getting significantly easier to learn this stuff as time goes on. The user experience is like so much better than it was 3 or 4 years ago, and it's only going to get better. It's going to get as easy as swiping your finger to send an email or something. Like email used to be really complex. Now it's insanely easy. My grandma does it. Bitcoin is going to get there, but we're still very early, which means that you get heavily rewarded for getting in early, because when it's not user friendly, you buy it before most people. And when most people buy it, what you already bought goes up way higher in price. And this is an important thing to mention, right? So to the early people that put in the work early when it's harder, they get heavily rewarded. And so it's worth it. And anything to say before we close this puppy off?
I think I think I like your nuggets, man. I'm
like
motivated. I always like your nuggets, man. And yeah, I think like for me, really like one of the key takeaways for me is just to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And like the more that I realize that, I'm putting myself purposefully into these situations to learn and to take responsibility. Like, you know, my Bitcoin does mean something to me, so I want to take responsibility for it. My health means something to me. I want to take responsibility for it. And it's going to be uncomfortable. And I have to remind myself that a lot. And so like, that's just my one takeaway from today is like, make yourself a little uncomfortable and learn something new. And yeah, take self-custody of your Bitcoin and ask us if you have any questions.
Boom. Yeah, I think it is kind of scary. And this is it's supposed to be, right? Like taking full ownership of your human experience, of your Bitcoin, of your health, of your feelings, your emotions, your relationships. Like it is scary because it's all on you, right? And with the work that goes into overcoming that fear, number one, you got to be more comfortable knowing that you don't know everything. And I the more I learn about Bitcoin, the more, you know, what is it? The bigger the island of knowledge gets, the bigger the shore of not knowing what the fuck is up gets bigger or something. Like I botched that, but like the more you know, like the more you realize you don't know.
Yeah.
And you know, it's good to push your, like I'm reading this technical analysis critique of hardware wallets, and it's like I'm literally getting into a point where I may as well be reading Chinese. I'm like, I don't even know what I'm reading anymore. Yeah. But it's good to get there sometimes because that lets you know, okay, like that is my threshold, that's my limit. How do I break down that obstacle into little chunks? How do I bite off little nibbles of that chunk? And eventually I get through that obstacle. And this is like the perpetual process with Bitcoin, it seems, in my experience, where like I go from not understanding something and being like, I don't even know if I can understand that, to then being like, well, can I understand this subcomponent of that? Oh yeah, it turns out that's not that bad when I spend like an hour reading articles. And then it turns out that that big obstacle is no longer big. And actually I can overcome that. And so I think it's just having a motivation and desire. And for me, it comes from having a significant sense of meaning in Bitcoin, not just personally, not just in terms of number, but this notion that, and I kind of had this insight yesterday, Bitcoin is the first institution for the next world we're going to live in. The previous one is crumbling. It's going to be messy for quite a period of time. But the first institution for the next world is Bitcoin. It's the monetary institution. And we nailed it. And it's good because that's the most important one. It's the foundation for all the other institutions to be built, you know, whatever the government institutions are, whatever the education institutions, health institutions, like everything's falling, everything's going to be rebuilt. It's going to be glorious. It's going to suck in the meantime. But we've got the first big institution. It's so fucking important because if you fix the money, you fix the world. I like literally have that on my heart. And by the way, these BTC live recrews are going to go live soon. But we're still working on it. So little tweaks to work out. But yeah, I mean, build meaning into it. That's what keeps your motivation high. It might be about just preserving your wealth. It might be about, you know, trying to understand the future of money so you can help other people understand it. But either way, thank you for listening. Thank you for taking responsibility for your wealth and your health and your Bitcoin. We will constantly be doing episodes about self-custody when we get into that Mastering Self-Custody show. So if you have any questions, plug them into the YouTube. We check the comments I check the comments pretty regularly, and we'll continue doing that. Thank you for listening. Thank you for stopping by the Stoa. If you enjoy the content, you can support the project by sending some sats to the QR code at bitcoinstoa.com or streaming some sats through something like the Breeze app. Wishing you all a wonderful day, and ciao for now.